inside the animus.
Which is...
It's a projector that renders genetic memories in 3 dimensions.
genetic memory.
Seems you'll need a bit of a tutorial. Very well. What if I told you that the human body not only housed an individual's memory, but the memories of his ancestors as well?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Ancestral Anecdotes, the only show on YouTube. So, I like to bring as many of my hobbies and interests as I can onto this channel. One of my hobbies I don't really talk much about is ancestry worship. Ancestry research. Ancestral research is one of my hobbies. I really like to look at my sort of history of my ancestors. I just haven't really talked much about it on my channel because it is almost inherently a personal thing. You know, I can't like freely talk about something an ancestor did in the 1800s when they lived in my hometown and have my last name. That's a little bit too close to doxing myself. But a good thing is, I've done a lot of ancestry research to the point where I can trace back to nobility. There's a few disclaimers I want to make in this video that will be in the description of all future Ancestral Anecdotes videos. In fact, let's tackle those right now. Commander Radix presents misconceptions in ancestry research. Number 1, that your descent from nobility is special and a unique thing about you. Most, if not all people, are descent from nobility, or at least nobility as we would recognize it. I want you to think about how a family tree works. You have you, let's say you were born in the 90s, and then you have your parents, let's say your parents are born in the 60s. That gives you 2 ancestors who are in that time zone. Then your grandparents, that's 4 ancestors. Then great-grandparents, that's 8 ancestors? I can't do math well. But as each branch of the tree goes on, there's going to be more and more ancestors, theoretically. Because if we existed in a vacuum, then that would suggest that, well, how should I put it? Look at population trends on a global scale. You'll realize that the population of Earth has been steadily increasing and not decreasing, which means eventually you're going to get to a point where the number of ancestors you theoretically have based on a generation is more than the population of Earth at the time. The population of your ancestors in, say, the 1100s would be immense, and compared to the actual world population of the 1100s, probably there's going to be a discrepancy. Long story short, nearly everyone, if not everyone, is descent from nobility. Many people can track down specific houses, and then a fewer amount can, like, trace it specifically, like can list this noble person had this person who had this person had this person, and then name each name up into themselves. I fall into that category. I can do that mostly because I was lucky enough to have a lot of ancestors who did ancestor research, and to have more. My lives overlapped with some of my great grandparents, which is I think for a lot of people unique. I know a lot of people who don't know their grandparents, like they just didn't know them. And of course, there are people who don't know their parents. There's a lot of stuff that goes into ancestry research that a lot of people can't do. Really, how much ancestry research you can do is pretty much limited to the luck of the draw as to how your life is, I guess. I was in a very lucky position where I can chart out a large portion of my ancestry and go back. When you go back to nobility ancestry has pretty much, the research has been done for you because they fall into the sphere of historical characters. But yeah, nobility in and of itself, being descent from nobility is not a special thing. Nevertheless, that doesn't change the fact that your noble ancestors were still your ancestors. Because of how much in the public sphere they are, most ancestors of this Ancestral Anecdotes series are going to be noble ancestors, you know, historical figures. Usually they'll have a Wikipedia page, and this video will be me commenting on the Wikipedia page of my ancestor. For me, there are 3 different points I've discovered that can reach back to nobility. One is there was this German nobleman who had a daughter who married a commoner and then fled to America. And that was one of my ancestors. You can find that ancestor on my dad's side. On my mom's side, if you keep going, you're eventually going to run into Scottish nobility around the 1200s. The German nobles was around the 1600s. Scottish nobles are around 1200s. Japanese, we have a family name that is heavily linked to a certain clan of samurai that invaded and occupied the region where my family comes from in Japan. I cannot name an ancestor to ancestor thing. I just know that that family came from this family, and I don't know how many generations of people there were that connect the two. I just know that it's connected. So those are going to be the three main sources of the three main roots on my family tree I'm going to go with in this series. So I just described to you our series of disclaimers that should be in the comments of every single episode in Ancestral Anecdotes. But nevertheless, let's begin, because I want to talk about an ancestor who I talked a little bit about on Twitter, who was a little bit extra, was a little bit of a mad lad, you might say. Now, he comes from that line of German princes from the 1600s that I mentioned. Oh, another thing I want to reference is because we're dealing with noble ancestry, many of you will probably find that you have the exact same ancestor. The thing I'm trying to present here isn't necessarily that I'm unique, it's look at these people that led to me, that's crazy. It's mostly to look at, wow, these people did all these crazy things back in the day. You know, severed heads, banished Jews, and they're part of a bloodline that can reach all the way to me, ordering 62 ounces of M&Ms off Amazon. Wow, they'd be disappointed in me. And you know what? Because they might possibly be your ancestors too, they'd be disappointed in you too. But yeah, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into the Animus. Otto I Wittelsbach, Duke of Bavaria, born 1117, died 1183. Otto Wittelsbach is my 25th great-grandfather. For those of you new to ancestry research, what does that mean? Well, your father is called your father, most people know that. Your father's father is your grandfather, and then his father is your great-grandfather. I think most people understand up to great-grandfather. Your great-grandfather's father was your great-great-grandfather. And because you get to a point where you're tired of saying the word great, because your great-great-grandfather's father is your great-great-great-grandfather, shorthand, you can say number of how many greats you should say, then great-grandfather. So your great-great-grandfather is your second great-grandfather. So Otto here is my 25th great-grandfather. So say great 25 times, and then grandfather. Otto I, 1117 to July 11th, 1183, called the Redhead, or in German der Rotkopf, was Duke of Bavaria from 1180 until his death. The Redhead. That's flattering. He was also called Otto IV as Count Palatinate of Bavaria from 1156 to 1180. He was the first Bavarian ruler from the House of Wittelsbach, a dynasty which reigned until the abdication of Ludwig III of Bavaria in the German Revolution of 1918. So this dude established a little political dynasty over Bavaria that lasted until German nobility ended. To be honest, 1918. He was born in Kelheim, which appears to be in Bavaria. Shocker. Ooh, his mother was Heilika of Pettendorf-Lengenfeld. That's a shame. Duke Otto I was probably born at Kelheim, the son of Count Palatine Otto IV of Wittelsbach and Heilika of Pettendorf-Lengenfeld, a grandson of the Hohenstaufen Duke Frederick I of Swabia. He was the brother of Archbishop Conrad I of Mainz and Salzburg. Upon the death of his father in 1156, he succeeded him as Count Palatine of the Bavarian Duchy, then under the rule of Henry the Lion, a scion of the Welf dynasty. Imagine being subservient to something called the Welf dynasty. It's really Velf, but I'm going to call it Welf, just to be wrong. So for context here, Germany at this time is a bunch of fractured states called the Holy Roman Empire. It's this institution of all these different kinda independent states that are subservient to one Holy Roman Emperor, and basically they elect a leader. And the leader, once you elect him, has to go down to Rome to be coronated, but then he becomes known as the Holy Roman Emperor, and he's sort of the big boy in town who watches over the Holy Roman Empire. Imagine if the Holy Roman Emperor was the President of the United States, but the states were also able to declare war on each other, or be declared war upon by countries outside of the United States. One of the best knights in the employ of Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, in 1155, he prevented a defeat of the emperor near Verona, where the army caravan was ambushed on the way back to Rome after the coronation at Rome. So basically there's a situation here. This is like 1100s. Catholicism's in full swing in Europe, and basically the Pope's like, you guys are all Christians, I'm sort of like the king of the Christians, I'm the Pope, so everyone should bow before me, you know, that sort of deal. Well, the monarchs, the kings and emperors and what have you of their countries are like, I think I should lead my country, thank you very much. You can give spiritual guidance, but at the end of the day, I rule my realm. You don't rule directly over all Christian realms. And that led to a conflict, especially between the Pope and the office of the Holy Roman Emperor. Frederick Barbarossa, really big figure in German history, almost sort of like the German King Arthur, except he was real. And I don't mean based off a real person, I mean real. Barbarossa was king of Germany, which was sort of like, the idea of Germany sort of existed, the idea of a kingdom of Germany still existed, it sort of overlapped with the Holy Roman Empire, but Barbarossa became Holy Roman Emperor. He had to go down to Rome to be coronated. He had to go through Italy to do that, and Italy was a lot more pro-Pope than they were pro-Emperor. So apparently he gets coronated at Rome, and on the way back, the rebelling Italians sort of attack the army caravan, which causes, you know, your boy Otto here to be a great knight and fight off the Italians. In the Dominium Mundi conflict between the Emperor and Pope, culminating at the 1157 Reichstag of Besançon, I don't know how to say that. Fiery Otto could only be kept from smiting the papal legate Cardinal Rolando Badinelli with his battle-axe by the personal intervention of Frederick. So the Reichstag of Besançon was basically a situation where the Holy Roman Empire held this meeting to discuss who really should have the power, the Holy Roman Emperor or the Pope. Evidently the Pope sent Rolando Badinelli as a cardinal to represent him in the Reichstag. This isn't Reichstag as in like the government building of Germany. This is more of like, think of how they held courts and congresses during this time in Europe. It's just referring to a meeting. Apparently, the Pope's representative pissed off Otto so much that Otto just came swinging at the dude and didn't stop until Frederick himself said, "You gotta chill out, man." So how do I relate to the Ancestor? I too feel a fiery rage, except I feel it whenever I see terrible YouTube comments. So I'd like to think that when I'm yelling at YouTube comments, I'm channeling the rage of my 25th great-grandfather when he channeled his rage at the Pope. He was finally rewarded with the Duchy of Bavaria on September 16th, 1180 at Altenburg in Thuringia after the deposition of Duke Henry the Lion. So apparently Duke Henry the Lion, who was leading Bavaria before, got overthrown, and Frederick was like, I'm going to give my loyal extra knight the office of Duke of Bavaria. And so that's how he got Bavaria. But he was so little regarded by many of the Bavarian aristocracy that they are said to have refused him the customary homage. They went so far as to refuse to attend his first court assembly at Regensburg. Imagine being told you're the Duke of this country, and then you hold a meeting and nobody shows up. I relate to this ancestor in whenever I hold a birthday party, nobody shows up. With the separation of Styria under Duke Ottokar IV in the same year, Bavaria lost the last of her southeastern territories. With the support of the emperor and his brother Conrad, Otto was able to secure the rule of his dynasty from the wary Bavarian nobility. His descendants ruled Bavaria for the next 738 years. So the emperor had to step in and say, hey, this Otto dude's your ruler. You know, better be good or I'm going to throw hands with you. And the Bavarians were like, okay, I guess this is our leader now. In 1182 or 1183, Duke Otto bought Dachau Castle. You got to be careful when the word Dachau gets thrown around. Let me make sure the castle isn't, like, any way related to, like, the concentration camp. Okay, it's in the same city. It's in Dachau. Like, you can't get out of that, but it's not, as far as I can see, it's not related to the concentration camp. He bought Dachau Castle, the ministerials, and all other appurtenances for a large sum of cash from the widow of the last Duke of Dachau and Marania, Conrad II, Duke of Marania. In 1183, Otto accompanied Emperor Frederick to sign the Peace of Constance with the Lombard League. The Lombard League was sort of the group of the Italian rebels that were pro-Pope, anti-Holy Roman Empire. And it appears after the war, they created the Peace of Constance. So Otto gets to be there at the peace conference. You know, he fought in the war, and now he gets to be there at its end. He died suddenly on the way back up at Pfullendorf in Swabia. He was succeeded by his only surviving son, Louis. Otto's mortal remains are buried in the crypt of Shiren Abbey. Okay, so he just freaking dies on the way back from signing a peace treaty. I relate to this ancestor, and whenever things start to look good for me, I just die. Coincidentally, that only surviving son, Louis, is my 24th great-grandfather. But yeah, that's the story of my ancestor, Otto I, Duke of Bavaria. He shares my general rage. Would this ancestor be proud of me? Would this skilled knight who has the courage to attack a representative of the Pope be proud of me? Maybe he'll be proud of how I meme on the Pope, but besides that, no, probably not. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this first episode of Ancestral Anecdotes. I hope you enjoyed. Expect to see more Ancestral Anecdote videos with the sort of clickbaity title, My Ancestor Did da-da-da-da, question mark, all caps. But yes, thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing to the channel if you have not yet. Support me on Patreon. If you want to see this channel continue, please, I beg of you. And yeah, have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Huge thanks to our patrons, including this month's $10 plus patron, Josh Adkins. Check out the description for more patrons and more info about how you can receive a shout out here.